The marble corridors of the United Nations headquarters in New York are quieter than usual, but inside one of its briefing halls, urgency hangs heavy in the air. Delegates from across the world listen intently as UN officials outline a fragile humanitarian picture emerging in Gaza. After months of relentless bombardment and blockade, the ceasefire, brokered earlier this month, has given way to a rare window of access. Trucks are moving again. Borders once sealed under fire are now tentatively opening. And for the first time in weeks, aid convoys are being allowed to roll through. Ramiz Alakbarov, the UN's Deputy Special Coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territories, takes the floor. His voice is steady, but it carries the weight of exhaustion, the kind that comes from managing one of the world's most complex relief operations. Starting from the ceasefire, he says, we brought over 24,000 metric tons of aid through all the crossings, and we have restarted both community and household-based distributions wherever conditions allow. It is a milestone, 24,000 metric tons of humanitarian assistance, food, water, medicine and emergency shelter supplies, reaching a population still trapped under ruin. But as Alakbarov makes clear, it's not enough. He continues, we have to do everything we can to avoid the return to the conflict. And that includes completion of the elements of the deal and creating an environment with less fragility. His tone hardens. Because we have seen repeated violations of the ceasefire, and then the violations take place, and of course humanitarian operations suffer. Those words echo around the chamber. Humanitarian operations suffer. A reminder that every shell that falls, every drone that flies overhead, sends aid workers back to their shelters and halts delivery lines for days. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, has spent the past 2 weeks coordinating with Israeli authorities and local partners to re-establish safe delivery corridors. Yet even as convoys expand, their journey remains perilous. Each crossing, each checkpoint, a negotiation. Across the hall, Saima Abdel-Jabbar, the World Food Programme's Middle East Regional Director, outlines the scale of the challenge in precise, almost clinical detail. Let me begin plainly, he says. The ceasefire has brought a fragile pause, but not peace. He pauses, letting the gravity of those words settle. While our access has improved, he continues, the needs in Gaza remain staggering. WFP is scaling up fast, but we are still racing against hunger, against time, and against the limits imposed by access constraints. He describes the operation like a race against collapse. Warehouses reopened, bakeries supplied, new routes cleared under supervision. In just about 20 days of scale-up, he adds, the World Food Programme has collected over 20,000 metric tons of food inside Gaza. Trucks are reaching their final destinations, supplying bakeries, partners and warehouses. It's an extraordinary logistical feat. Yet what makes the moment bittersweet is the awareness that for every shipment that makes it in, tens of thousands of people remain out of reach. For families in northern Gaza, food lines snake for hours. Hospitals rely on generators that might shut down at any time. And amid this fragile calm, local NGOs, many of them the backbone of distribution efforts, are still sidelined by security restrictions and permit delays. From the podium, Tom Fletcher, the UN humanitarian chief, brings a note of both optimism and warning. The good news, he says, is that because of the US brokered ceasefire, we are now getting in a lot more aid than we were able to get in before. We are scaling up as part of our 60-day life-saving plan. The figures are staggering. 24,000 tons delivered, 20,000 tons in WFP stockpiles, all within 3 weeks. It's more aid in a single month than Gaza received in the entire previous quarter. But Fletcher quickly tempers expectations. This is real progress, he says, but it's a drop in the ocean. It's just a start of what we're going to need to do to deliver on the humanitarian parts of the American plan and deliver for the people of Gaza that life-saving aid that they so badly need. That American plan refers to the broader framework negotiated by Washington, one that not only paused the fighting, but established a humanitarian coordination cell linking the US, Egypt, Israel, and the UN. The mechanism allows vetted convoys to enter Gaza through multiple crossings, primarily Kerem Shalom and Rafah, under joint monitoring. For the UN, it represents a cautious breakthrough, but for the aid community, it's a reminder of how fragile coordination can be when politics overshadows logistics. The camera pans across the briefing room, notebooks fill with figures, diplomats exchange brief remarks, and the sound of clicking pens breaks the silence. Outside on the East River, autumn sunlight glints off the UN flag, a momentary calm far removed from the noise and dust of Gaza's border crossings. In Khan Yunis, aid workers speak of an uneasy routine. Every morning, convoys line up at checkpoints, waiting for clearance from Israeli liaison officers. The trucks carry sacks of flour, bottled water, fuel, and emergency tents. Some make it through within hours, others are held overnight. In the north, where access remains restricted, distribution is often conducted by drone drop or through small convoys escorted by ICRC staff. Local volunteers risk their lives to deliver supplies to shelters still housing families displaced months earlier. Many schools remain packed beyond capacity, classrooms turned into sleeping quarters, chalkboards replaced by stacks of ration boxes. In one such shelter, a teacher named Aisha tells a UN field officer, "When we hear trucks arriving, children run to the gate." For them, it's not just food, it's proof that the world still remembers us. Back in New York, Ramiz Alakbarov emphasizes the same point in different words. We have restarted community and household distributions wherever conditions allow. But he adds a warning: conditions rarely allow. Security incidents continue to disrupt supply lines. The UN Security Department has documented multiple ceasefire breaches in recent days, sporadic exchanges of fire, unexploded ordnance, and drone overflights. Each incident forces humanitarian convoys to suspend operations for up to 48 hours. Despite these challenges, the UN insists that scaling up aid remains the only viable path to sustaining peace. The humanitarian presence, they argue, is not only about relief, it's a stabilizing force, preventing renewed conflict by meeting basic needs. Inside the UN chamber, Tom Fletcher's words resonate as a closing note of realism. It's just the start. His tone carries both pride and frustration. For those working on the ground, the start means sleepless nights, endless coordination calls, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. For Gaza's civilians, it means one more day with food, medicine, and perhaps hope. As the session ends, the delegates file out quietly, a few nodding to each other, others staring down at their phones, already reading new field reports. The meeting may be over, but the work continues in warehouses, in crossing points, in endless spreadsheets mapping needs against available trucks. Beyond the statistics lies a more human truth, that behind every ton of aid, there's a family waiting, a patient surviving, a child eating their first proper meal in days. The voice of Ramiz Alakbarov closes the segment in the recording archive. We have to do everything we can to avoid the return to conflict. It's not a plea, but a warning. Because for Gaza, every lapse in diplomacy is measured not in politics, but in lives. As night falls over the East River, the UN headquarters glows against the skyline. Far away, under the same stars, the convoys roll again, headlights piercing through the dust, carrying the promise of another day of survival for Gaza's 2 million people.